So I'm getting ready to paint my background, which is going to be the first step of my painting. And I'm looking at my photo, and I know that I want, obviously the background is darker on this side and it has a kind of a halo of lighter color around here, which I do want to keep in my painting. But I also want to look at what color I might mix into my background color. Now at this point you should have received Payne's Gray, which is a kind of a blue-black color. I've got it here on my palette, and here's a little puddle of it mixed up. It's very dark. It's got a blue tone to it. I'm going to be using that for my background, but then I also want to look at what color might I mix with it in order to enhance these surfaces that are in my image. I've got these purple grapes, I have a blue vase, and I have a red-violet flower. I don't want to try to match one of those. Instead, I want to use something that's going to allow the colors to pop forward more. Since my blue area is the biggest area, I think I'm going to use the complementary color of blue, which is orange, and add a little orange to my Payne's Gray for the background, so that even though it'll be subtle, it's still going to push these colors forward, make them pop a bit more. So on my palette, I've mixed up a very strong value of the Payne's Gray, and now I'm going to use my brush to add some of the Vermilion to it. And Vermilion, as you know, is the orangey color on your palette. So I'm going to take a nice full brush of the orange and mix that into the Payne's Gray. Now I'm getting a nice kind of a warm, almost like a purpley tone, which is perfect for my background color. So I'm going to wash that brush out because I am going to need it to get my background wet. So the way that this works when you are doing your background is you'll definitely want to make sure that you wet your background first. We need to make sure that we have the entire background. Now if this leaf had touched the edge, I could probably work section by section, but I'm going to go ahead and attack this entire background, not inside the handles, but I will do those while I still have my color on my palette. But I want to start to work in some of the small areas. Now I have the largest round brush, which is a number 8. You can see it there on the handle. And I also have my flat brush, your larger flat brush, which is your wash brush. And I want to start by getting water using the round brush into any of the small areas first. And I'm just using clean water. So I want to try to get around the more challenging areas. So I'm just grabbing clean water on my brush, and I'm going to kind of go around any of the shapes that come in contact with the background. If there's any small areas, obviously that big flat brush is not going to fit inside those small areas very well. And I want to make it almost like a bead of water, because by the time I get around, I want that where I started to still be wet. So I need to make sure that I'm getting a decent amount of water on there. So I'm almost creating like a bead of water. You can kind of see it right there along that edge where you can see the shine picking it up. All the way around that area. And I can't work slowly, got to work quickly, but also carefully. And I'm going to keep dipping my brush because I want to make sure I have plenty of water to create that bead of water all the way around the perimeter, because I do not want it to dry where I started once I get all the way around. So once I get the edges filled in with my 8 brush, then I'm going to go in with the large wash brush and fill in all the way around the rest of the composition. Okay. That looks pretty good along there. So I'm going to get this area. And it's important to have somewhat clean water. Like my water's got a slight tone to it, but it's okay. I'm going to be putting a dark color on top of that anyway. I just want to make sure that it's not really dark, dirty. All right, so I'm almost around, and I'm looking down here, and it looks like where I started is still good and wet, so that's a good sign. Slide this up. I want to make sure that I'm getting a nice clean line where that background and the white of the table and the background color merge. I want to make sure I get a really nice clean line there. All right, so I've got everything wet, not wasting any time, grabbing my big wash brush, and I'm going to fill in the spaces. And I want to make sure that I'm using plenty of water. And remember, I already mixed my color up for my background. And I have my salt nearby because I'm going to use a little salt technique in the background. And you have a choice. You can work with some salt in the background. You could do a little lift out with paper towel to create a lighter area. You could just leave that area lighter and work toward creating that halo in a wet on wet technique. But I'm going to use a little salt because I like the salt effect. We did a little bit of salt on the center of the flower to create those crystals, and in this case we're going to be using it as a decorative accent that'll create interest. All right, now I'm almost got everything wet, and then I can start on my background color. Now this is where I started, so I want to make sure that I really check that carefully, make sure it's still wet. If it's not wet, then either I didn't use enough water or I chatted too much while I was working. So make sure that you double check where you began, make sure that it's nice and wet. All right, so now I'm going back to my background color with my number 8 brush. And remember, this is going to be my darker part, so I'm going to drop in my color all along this edge. And if I find that if I dab the brush, I get deeper value. You'll probably want to blend around, stroke the brush around the edges of things to get closer to the edges, but just dabbing it in place allows the color to kind of float there in the water and stay a little more concentrated. So I'm going to get that into all the nooks and crannies. And I'm just grabbing right from the palette. I'm not rinsing my brush in between because I'm not changing colors. And when I see that if I brush it out, it tends to get lighter. Do you see how it's lighter there? When I let go, it has a nice dark tone. So I like that dark tone because this is my dark side of my photo. So I want to make sure that I'm getting that nice and dark. So you want to look at your photo and see where your background is deepest and darkest and kind of start in that area. Okay, so this kind of goes from that darker color to sort of a medium tone as it blends out. Oh, this looks like it got pretty dry up in there. So I'm going to grab my flat brush and get some water up in there. So I like how this is creating a nice variance in the background value, which is nice. All right, so I'm almost out of background color, so I'm going to have to quickly make some. But I also know that this other side of the background is going to be my lighter edge. So it's okay if it's a little bit lighter over here. Although I would like it a little bit darker than that. Alright, so this got dry in here, so I'm going to again grab my flat brush, add a little bit more water in this space. Yeah, this got very dry through here, so I'm going to add some water all around in here. And it's hard to get this big brush around those small areas, so just be careful. Mix up a little bit more of my background color really, really fast. Okay. So down in here, it's also a little on the dark side, so I'm going to add some of my darker color down in here. Let that bleed up. Watch the edges of your objects, make sure that that edge is nice and clean. Okay, this is going to flow up to a slightly lighter value. Got to work quickly, yet carefully. Use the tip of that brush to help you kind of navigate around the edges of things. All right, so this is my area where it's lightest, and this is also the part where I'm going to be doing the salt technique. So I want to make sure that my salt is ready to go. All right, so I've got everything in except for my two little handle holes, which I'll do after I get my salt in place. So I'm grabbing my salt, and I'm just going to grab a little pinch of it and sprinkle that in. Now, the paper has to be wet enough to actually create the salt technique. I'm not going to put it everywhere. I'm just going to kind of concentrate up here in this area around the flower, which would kind of be my focal point. And that's all. I'm not going to put any down here, but that's my personal choice. If you want to put it everywhere, you can. I just find that it sometimes can work against your subject and make it look a little too busy. So that's where I'm going to put mine. And at this point, I'm getting a little bit of pooling down here. I'm going to kind of drag that out. At this point, I'm going to let that dry. I kind of like how I'm getting this nice shadow edge along there. To compare it to my photograph, I can see that that's the darker part. It looks like it's creating a little bit of a cast shadow, the vases. I definitely want to look at where this cast shadow meets. It's a little bit darker there, so I may need to add a little bit of darker value in that space. In order to do that, I'm going to need to re-wet. Hopefully I don't destroy what I've got going here, because I like what I have. But I also don't want to, I want to make sure that I'm honoring that shadow line. So I think I'm going to bring some of that darkness out all the way to here. Now I got a little messy there on that edge. I'm not happy about that. Let me see if I can drag that down just a bit so I can make that straight again. And yeah, that's a little bit lower than. So there, so now I've got that dark line just so that where that edge lines, so that it just kind of creates the same curve as the bottle in place there. All right, so up here at the top, I can start to see my crystals are already beginning to form, which looks really nice. So I'm gonna let that rest. And now I'm gonna use my brush. I've got kind of a medium value of the background color on there, and I'm going to paint that in. Now this side is much darker than this side in my photo, but I also need to look at my actual background in my painting and decide if they need to be that drastically different or if I can just use the tone that's on my brush. And I think I'm okay with the tone on my brush. I don't think I need to change it too much. Now if it looked like it was really dark against the rest of it, I would probably have more of a problem, but this looks pretty good. So I'm just going to fill that in. All right, so I'm going to let that rest. So I'm ready to put my first layer of color on the vase. I was going to start on the grapes, but while the masking fluid was wet, but I got sidetracked and had other things I took care of, so this is now dried, so I'm ready to actually work on the vase first. I wanted to do that, and then I can work on the flower and the grapes after that. It really depends on what you want to work on. You don't have to do it in this order. But what I'd like to do first is I'm going to begin by wetting the entire vase area with just clean water. And I'm working with a number 6 brush. I probably could use a little bit bigger brush just to cover more ground a little more quickly. So I'm going to got a bigger brush here I'm going to work with. And I just want to work with getting water on everything first, and then I'll start to work with the color. Now, I've already put the color on my palette that I want. I mixed up a little bit of ultramarine blue, and I also mixed up some of the Prussian blue. I think I'll use less of that, but I wanted to have some of that ready. And I do want to have a little bit of the green ready as well, because there are some green tones. There's a stem that goes down through the middle of the vase in my photo, so I do want to make sure that I have the ability to indicate that as well. And there are some gray areas as well. We talked a little bit about that in the last section on the glass reflection. So I have a little bit of gray on my palette as well. So this is almost completely wet. Okay, so now I'm ready to work with my color, and I've got my photo here next to where I'm working. So I'm going to start to work within all of the blue parts. I'll probably drop in a little bit of gray through here, but while it's wet, I'm going to start to put in the next value darker as well. So I don't want to get a lot of detail in this first layer, because this is just my initial layer of color. So it's going to be kind of loose and not very detailed at all. But I want to start to get color in place. And remember, it's wet surface, so it's going to grab that color and kind of run with it. And that's all right. And if you find that, the color you're putting on like this is pretty dark, but I'm going to kind of run it around so it gets a little bit lighter. I don't like that that's not as loose as I would like it to be, because it looks like it's, maybe that got a little dry through there. Didn't have as much moisture. This area is much more what I was hoping for. Now, is my blue color exactly the same as the color blue in the vase? No. Can I get that blue? Not with the colors that I currently have available to me. So I'm going to make do with the ultramarine as the color for the vase. Now, I am going to start to look at the overall color. And I know that this area through here has that gray tone, so I'm going to kind of leave that. And I also know that this section through here has that green tone from the stem, so I'm going to kind of leave that, the white of the paper, a bit. Now, of course, I'm going to work within that. I'm also looking, these areas in here are kind of that gray tone, so I'm going to leave bits of that, try to stay away from that. I don't want to get too much into that detail, because I'll put some gray tone in there. And I do have this a little bit over here is a little bit darker, so I'm just adding a little bit darker. I can pull some of that darkness up into here, where I notice on my photo that's a little bit deeper in there. Also got a little bit in here. I don't want to have just that dark tone there. I want to make sure that I'm getting it where it needs to go. So that color is also down in this shadow area, or it's actually a reflection of the grapes. So I'm going to get that tone in here, all through that space. I noticed when I was wetting my vase area that I did get a little bit of water into the top of that grape, so you can see it bleeding in there. I'm not crazy about that, but I should be able to hide it, because that grape's going to be a really dark purple, and it will certainly be darker than that blue color. So I'm not too concerned at this point. All right, so I'm looking at my vase in the photo, and you can see it a little bit there on the edge. So I'm looking at where these darker parts are, and I want to try to step up my value in those spots. This is where I'm going to lean on that Prussian blue a little bit. Now again, as I said, this is not exactly the same color, It's not exactly the same color as the actual vase in my photo, but I can certainly take what I see from this photo and start to use it to my advantage in creating the lights and darks that are present. And I'm just looking at where the lights and darks are and kind of playing along with those shapes and spaces. There's a little bit of dark through here. And if I do it while it's wet, I get this nice soft edge to my shadows, which I like. I don't want to have anything too dark. And I like how the two blues blend together to create another color there too, which is nice. All right, so I'm going to do a little bit darker blue in this side of the handle. I don't want to wait too long because I do want to get a little bit of that gray tone in there too. So I have some gray. I got to make sure I'm getting this on there while it's still all wet. Otherwise it's gonna dry and I won't be able to get this gray in. I've also got a little bit of gray up here in this handle on this side. So I'm gonna put that in. And I want to put a little bit of green right along where this stem line is. All right, so for my first layer, I'll move this over just a bit. For my first layer, that's pretty good. I mean, I'm seeing this darker piece in here, so I think I'm gonna actually get just a little bit. Hopefully this is still wet enough. Oh yeah, that's perfect. So I want to try to get a little bit of that darker color. This is the Prussian blue. I want to kind of get some of that through here because it looks like it goes up into there and then over into this area. So I'm going to kind of brush that out into there. And there is a lighter space through there, so I'm going to leave that lighter area. That's kind of working out well. And I might try to darken this bit right here, down in this space here. Clean up the edge of that grape a bit. And again, I want to make sure that I'm getting this in while it's wet, otherwise it's going to dry with a harsh line and I don't want that. So okay, so that's kind of gives me the layout of what I need for that first layer on my vase. It certainly is not finished, but it gives me the start for how that glass is going to begin to take shape. Now obviously where those white highlights are, I've got my masking fluid there and I'll be removing that and it'll maintain that white color of the paper below. So at this point my glass has dried and I'm ready to work. I think I'm going to work on the flower next. And when I look at my photo, I notice that the color of the flower that I have actually kind of falls in that red-violet category. So if you look at that dot, you know, that's really where my color palette lies. Now, yeah, there are some darker parts that are more purple, maybe even some blue-violet in there. And of course, I need to include the complement of red-violet, which if I go directly across the wheel, is going to be a yellow-green. And I do have some of that mixed up and ready to go. So on my palette, I've included some ultramarine plain just because I know I might want to use some of that to enhance colors while it's wet. I've got some of my phthalo crimson mixed up, and I also made a violet mixing the two together, so I have that ready as a kind of a red violet that I'm going to use for a majority of the petals. And then I have some yellow green that I've mixed up. I've put a little bit of lemon yellow and some of our hooker's green together to make that as my complement tone, which I'll use in the darkest value areas of the flower. So I'm going to work on some petals, and I can pick whichever petal I want, but I definitely want to make sure I'm working petal by petal and never wet petal next to wet petal. So I'm going to start with, let's see. Now I also need to pay attention to which one of these are leaves. Like this is a leaf, this is a leaf, this is a leaf. I need to make sure this is a leaf here, and there's another, this is a leaf. So I need to make sure I pay attention to that so I'm not painting in those areas. If I accidentally make a mistake and I end up making it a petal, it's okay, but I would prefer to keep that balance of green to red violet on there. So for now, I'm going to start with this petal here. Sometimes you can use some strategy when you're choosing petals to work with, because you can look at how many you have, where you can leave spaces, which ones touch each other, so that you can kind of plan out where you want to start so that you don't end up with a place where you can't continue forward because everything's touching everything else. This petal's off to the side. I'll be able to work with any of these other ones next, so I'm gonna stick with this one over here. Now it's possible that I could work with two petals at the same time if I wanted to, but I think that gets kind of confusing, and then if it were to dry too quickly, that could be a problem. So I just wet that petal, and if you remember from our steps, I'm going to start with the colors complement. So in this case, this yellow-green. So this petal goes down behind this petal here, and there's a darker band of value there. So I'm going to add my complement into that darker band of color in there. So I'm going to put some all along that edge, because that's where it goes underneath this other petal. And I'm just kind of dabbing the brush. Because if I stroke, if you remember when you make a stroke, then it ends up putting the darkest spot toward wherever you stop the line, and I want it evenly dark all along that edge. So now I'm going to grab the violet that I mixed up, and I'm going to start on the opposite edge of the petal. And this is a little more purpley than my flower in the photo, and that's okay. I mean, I can kind of make it what I want it to be. But I'm also going to wash my brush and get as much moisture out as I can before I start pulling this color toward the complement, just like we did in our practice. And because I want to get the color right over the top of the green that's there, that yellow-green, because it's not a yellow-green flower. It's and I'm going to go in with some of the straight pink. I'm looking at my photo for guidance. I'm looking at where it's most pink. Now, I know this doesn't look anything like the petal so far, but it will. So I'm going to now, using a clean, fairly dry brush, I'm going to kind of blend the two. So I want to get this pink up and over into this green space, because I want the two to blend together. It's going to give me a natural shadow tone. I'm going to put a little more of the purple in there. Again, looking at my picture for guidance. There's a little bit of purple up in here. I'm just looking at the darker spots of the petal. Because this petal has a lot of folds and bends in it, so I want to make sure I'm getting, so you can see there next to it. I feel like I need to get that darker value through there even deeper. Now the green is in there mainly because it blends with the colors that I'm working with and creates a natural shadow tone. So it's going to blend with that purple to create that shadow value. Now, I know that looks weird, but it's all by itself right now. So eventually when the other petals are in there, it's going to look very natural. Now I know I can't paint that leaf or that leaf, or this petal or this petal or this petal, because it's all touching it. I shouldn't even work in that little space. I'm going to leave it all. So I'm going to skip over and work in a spot that is not touching that one. So maybe I'm going to tackle this petal next. So again, and I'm not going to have you watch every petal, but I'm going to get a few done here so you can kind of see how the process goes. And then you can move forward on your petals. Now, some of your flowers, you might say, oh, my flower's white, I don't have to paint anything. Well, you don't want to have pencil lines as the only reason your flower exists. You want it to be because of the paint that you've applied. And while we don't have white paint because we use water to lighten the color, you actually need to look beyond the actual color of the flower and see what might be there. So the best way that I find to do that is to lay a piece of white paper next to the photograph and see if it's truly white. Like even on my photo here, I might think that this tabletop is white, but if I look at next to the white border, Is it white? No, it's actually kind of a pale blue. So just look at the actual color of your flower next to a edge of white paper, and you'll see what color it actually is. You'll find that flowers that look white typically are not. They're actually maybe a pale yellow or pale gray. They could be a pale blue or violet. So they're going to have a color. And it's important that you think about that color and what it may actually be, rather than just assuming, oh, it's white and I don't have to paint it, because that is never the correct answer when it comes to doing a painting. You don't leave part of it undone. So just look at your actual color and see what you can find out about it. All right, so I'm gonna work with the purple now. And again, I'm looking at my photo. This one has less dark purple spots. Although I'm going to put some of this purple right over the top of the yellow-green, because and my purple is kind of a red-violet. Yellow-green is the complement, as we established before. And I'll definitely want that to get deeper. This one has a little more pink in it, so I'm going to get some of the pink tones. And again, I'm going to blade that right over the top, blending that out. This one has some highlights through there that I may use to do a little bit of fluting in there. If you remember from our practice, if you had the audio on, and I noticed some of you were listening to or viewing the video without audio, which that's when you can't hear the words. And sometimes the words are important to help you know how to move forward with your painting. So definitely make sure you're listening to the audio so that you know more about how to approach your work. So I'm gonna just deepen that value in here a little bit. All right, so that petal's about done. Make sure my edges are nice and clean. All right, so again, I know that probably doesn't look all that much like a petal yet, but I'm going to keep working with looking at the photo, interpreting what values are there, creating those lights and darks, and as I add more petals to this, it's going to start to look really nice. So I'm going to let that dry. Of course, I would continue and maybe pick a petal that's not touching, or even start on one of the leaves, because now I could do some interior petals in here because they're not touching either of those, but that is not dry. Even if it might feel dry to touch it to the surface, if the paper is still bowed up, then it probably still has moisture in it. While we're here, I'm going to talk a little bit about the grapes. The grapes are one of the harder choices of fruit to work with, only because you have to treat each separate grape as one piece of fruit. You can't do the whole thing or it's going to look like a purple blob. And as you can see by my photo, each one has its own value scale and its own highlight. So like this one's more purple, deep, almost like a black purple. This one has more red violet. This one's almost got some orangey tones in it. So each one has its own kind of color family that you're going to need to figure out. And also there's a highlight. So that highlight needs to happen, but it's got a soft edge. So we didn't use any masking fluid. You would never use masking fluid on your fruit because we want to create that soft edge highlight. So I'm going to have a paper towel handy in case I want to do any lift out. But for our purposes, this is my first layer of value, and just like on the glass, this is only my first layer of value. I'm certainly not finished with that. The flower I probably will work back into as well at some point, but first layer of value is never going to be your finished layer. The only part of this that's probably isn't going to get worked back into is the background. I don't think I'll work back into that. I may, but I may not. So I want to focus on my first layer of value, which is going to be, it's going to tend to be lighter in value. So I'm looking at, I'll start with this grape here, which is really dark. And there is one behind it, and there's one next to it, and they're, you know, you have to look at which ones are by it because those are the ones you can't paint next. You got to wait till this one dries before you paint next to it. So I'm just going to wet this one grape. And since I already have a purple on my palette, that it's not bad for that particular grape, but it definitely needs to be more blue-violet. So I'm just going to grab kind of a deep blue-violet here on my brush. And I got a highlight right about in there, so I want to make sure I'm avoiding, that's probably a little more blue than I would like. that's better. You can see how it's already crawling, so I'm going to increase that a little bit. It still looks a little too blue, but we'll go with it. All right, so I'm going to bring this color around. Now the highlight area is right in there, so I'm going to try to avoid that space. I think I got a little dry on that edge, so I'm just kind of filling that in, kind of easing that paint around there. All right, so I'm going to leave that little highlight in there, and it's okay that it's slightly blue. And if it gets to a place where it's bothering me, I can take my brush and kind of dry it out, and I can use that almost like a little mop. So I'm just kind of using that dry brush. Kind of lifting some of that color out using a kind of a mopping method. So I've got a paper towel here I'm dabbing my brush onto just to kind of create that soft highlight. Okay, now I'm going to watch the paint. Now it's kind of drying back in around that little spot, but that'll create that nice soft highlight. So that grape, if we look at my photo, that grape is this grape. Now that's the first layer of value. Clearly there's some shadow here that I'll have to adapt to. That's the shadow from this grape that casts a shadow on there. This grape casts a shadow this way. So I'll definitely have to add those, but for first layer, that's completely appropriate. It's just getting me started with where the darker values are and creating the highlight so I can build from there. And I won't need to re-wet that grape. I can certainly work on a layer on top of that because that's a nice strong color, but it's not a finished layer. So, so from there, I can work on maybe this grape or move to another grape. I'm going to pick one that's got a little bit more of a variance in color, so you can see how that works. So I'm going to do this one here. And this one has almost like an orangey blush tone to it. So I'm going to wet this grape. It also has a nice highlight, which is down in this area. It's got a deep purpley edge across the bottom, which I'm going to grab some of that same tone I just used. And I'm going to carefully put that along this edge. Of course, it went right over my highlight area, so I'm going to have to do a little bit of that lifting out technique that I just showed. So it has purple on that edge. And it has kind of a blush color in there as well. So I'm going to get a little bit of burnt sienna, tiny touch of vermilion, and I watered it down because I don't want it to be super dark, but this is the tone that's in this whole center area of that grape. So I want you to look at my photos. You can see where I'm getting at. Okay, so you see that kind of blushy tone that's in there. Now, of course, this is not the finished layer, but I've got this dark color that goes around the side and across the top, so I'm going to hit across the top with that darker value. And if I control the amount of liquid in my brush, then I can control it better on the paper as well. So I'm going to take this color right along in here. I'm going to let that blush tone kind of be there. I don't want to take it away. And there is some down in here. But by doing this the wet on wet, I'm getting this soft edge to that color, and I don't want a hard edge. So that kind of goes across there. All right, so I've got my highlight, and I need to get that back. So my highlight was right in there, so I'm drying my brush. And again, I'm going to kind of use my brush like a lifting tool. And I need to keep lifting and wiping it clean on a paper towel so I can start to establish that highlight. Now, another way to actually make a highlight like that, if I wanted to make it more severe, is to wrap the paper towel around my finger and very carefully kind of dab in where I can really create a stronger highlight, and then I can actually blend a little bit around that. So I don't like the shape of it, because that's the shape of the tip of my finger rather than the shape of the highlight. So that's not bad for my first layer. And of course that grape again is this one that has this kind of orangey undertone. So this is going to get another layer, but for my first layer, that's a good start. That way it'll kind of leave that haze, and I'll be able to create a wash over the top to create that darker value, or the actual value that's there. You can see it's like a purple over the top of that kind of orangey tone. All right, so if I was going to continue painting grapes, I could jump to this one or that one or this one, or probably not that one yet, but I could even work on the stem. I could move somewhere else to begin to continue to address grape petals. I could even move back to my flower at this point and continue to work on there. Again, making sure I'm not touching anything that has already been painted. Now on the glass, I could actually begin my second layer of color, because I know at this point I have my first layer in place, and now I need to start on my second layer, which is going to involve a little bit more detail. And I could actually do that because none of my grapes are touching the glass, the ones that I've painted. So there's no contamination with wet to wet. So if I take some of the blue tones that I worked with on my glass, and I didn't have those pre-mixed, which normally I would. So I've got the ultramarine blue, and I have some of the Prussian blue, and then I mix some of that together to create some of those color changes. And I want to start to look at where the glass actually has some darker value tones that I can start to enhance. So I'm going to be layering on top of the color that's already there and establishing these darker spots on the glass. So in this case, I did not pre-wet because some of these edges are a little more crisp. So that's a nice crisp edge that I see in my photo. And this kind of stair steps up and over here. There's a bit of a highlight in there. And this kind of goes up and over. So I want to start to blend in, getting the harder edge parts where I know it is hard edged. And then where I see that it softens is near the top edge of what I just painted. So I'm getting my brush clean, I'm wiping it off on a paper towel, and I'm going to kind of blend just with a wet brush. Now, if you wait too long, that color dries and you don't have the chance to blend that edge, but look how nicely that blends out. So I can take that, kind of blend it, following the contours of the glass. I can blend that out on that edge. And this edge is also soft, so I'm going to blend that part out. But keeping that crisp actually works well. So I'm going to blend this slightly downward along the edges of the stem line. And as the liquid on my brush gets lessened, I can kind of streak that down, and that allows that nice crisp shape. Now I'm going to show you what I'm working with here. So you can see there's like a hard line along there and here, and that's what I established, and then I kind of created this shape that's darker in there. Now this also comes up around here and into that handle, so maybe I'll work on that part next. So I'm going to grab a little bit of that color, and this is crisp. There's like a dark, it's not quite dark enough. There's a dark line. It's up in this space, kind of shaped like that, and it goes up and over this highlight area. And glass is always fun to paint because it creates these sort of chunky shapes. So if you look at the actual shapes of the highlights, and remember this is going to be white, that where I've got my masking fluid. So if I put a dark contrasting color next to it, it's going to really pop well when I remove that masking fluid. And this happens to have a dark shape that kind of comes through here. And because this has handles on it, those handles are attached in the glass making process, and it creates like a thickened part where it blends into the body of the glass. So I can actually start to create that rounded finish there This has a round shadow here in the glass. So I can show you again on my photo, just kind of emulating this dark part there, this dark part in there, and this little shape here and along in there. So I'm just kind of looking at what I've got in my photo and how that might actually play out and create some of the shapes that I'm seeing in the glass. So my photo is my guide. I cannot paint without my photo out, so make sure that you are continuing to look at that photo. It's almost like it's the front cover of the puzzle that you're trying to create, and it helps if you look at it and see what shapes you're looking for, so you know where you're going to be trying to recreate those values. So there's a darker section through here. It stays light next to the stem of the flower, but this area is darker, so I'm going to grab some of this dark color through here. I'm going to keep that a little bit lighter in there. There's a small light space in my photo, but I'm going to make it a little bit bigger just as a point of emphasis. And always think about the shape that you're actually creating with your glass. You know, this is a rounded form, so I don't want to make this all straight. This neck is straight, but then it goes out into this, like the edges of the glass. So I want to make sure that I'm not restricting that form. I still want to be thinking about how that's shaped and how that might work. So now I'm going to go with that wet brush that's clean and blend out this bottom edge, because this can stay, well, it's actually blended a little bit on this edge. So just putting in the color and quickly going back in with a wet brush. Now if you wait too long, it's not going to blend, but this was just the right amount of wait time, and I can blend that. All right, so I'll lay my photo there so you can see again, if you can see that. You can see again how I've been working in this darker shape that's there. Okay. So I would continue working. I'll come back when I've got a little bit more done, and you can check that out.